Rick Rhodes from Fine Art Connoisseur, and today we're interviewing Lisa Schiller from Schiller and Bodo in New York.
The focus of Schiller and Bodo is European paintings from 1860 to 1930. Sometimes we go a little earlier, sometimes we go a little later. Primarily French paintings, because France was the core of the development of the history of art in the 19th century. Not to say that the Spanish and the Italian and the Belgian and the Dutch painters, there were many, many painters in the 19th century, but in terms of the evolution of style and orientation and technique, the French were really the forerunners. I mean, they were the first people who were painting outdoors, painting from nature instead of painting in the studio where things were very composed. Several artists were concerned with effects of light, so that they would do these oil sketches in either like in a pasture or in the mountains, and paint clouds and shimmering light and empty landscapes, where it was really more about what the artist was visually perceiving rather than trying to tell a story or to depict something from history. So the French were the first ones to do that, and then other nationalities, artists from other countries were traveling to France to study because they had the best academies for learning traditional painting. But while they were learning, things were evolving very quickly in France, and artists were experimenting with different techniques and different subject matter, and so it had an effect on all of the artists from other countries as well. And then, of course, these 19th century painters were doing these outdoor paintings. It evolved into Impressionism, which was no longer, really depicting something that looked exactly like what you were looking at, but your impression of what you were looking at. So we specialize in traditional painters as opposed to Impressionist painters, but many of these artists are what you would call a bridge painter, where they're going from classical painting to Impressionism, and so you really know what you're looking at, and let's see, how should I put this? In the landscape painters, you start to really appreciate whatever the subject is that the artist chose to paint in a way that goes beyond what the subject actually is. Selling a painting to the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C.
Do you mind telling us a little more?
Well, it was by Rousseau. I said Rousseau was one of the Barbizon painters who we really appreciate a great deal. And they found it. I mean, I think we did a mailing with a reproduction of it, and then they contacted us and came to see it. Philip Conisbee, who's just like a great scholar, and he was so enthusiastic about it, and I enjoyed that very much. Oh, it's happened so many times. Usually because someone else, because either, we hesitated too long in making up our mind, or because the price was such that the market really wasn't there yet, and so you had to anticipate that it would increase in value, or someone else, saw it before we saw it. Yeah, it had definitely happened. Many things I would have liked to have owned or kept. Yeah, and that instead we sold them. It'd be a tough call. Well, I live in New York, so I'm not going to say New York, but New York is a great place to look at art.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be, I mean, if I wanted to look at French, my specialty, I would go to Paris. And if I wanted to just have pure, like, pleasure, I think I would go to Venice. Because I love all those Tintorettos and Titians and Guardis. Well, the first thing that I would suggest is going to visit as many museums as you can. And I mean, New York, of course, or Paris have these like tremendous range and breadth of 19th century painters. But there's many regional museums all over Europe, and in almost every city in the United States, you know, there's a good museum, and that's what I would suggest people do. I mean, that's how I got into the business. Is that when I was in even in high school and then in college, I was an avid museum goer. I didn't study art history, but I loved to go to museums, and you know, you find out what you like, what are you attracted to, and then you have to figure out what you can afford, because you could be attracted to Renaissance paintings, but none come on the market, you know, and when they do, they bring $30 million, you know, so you have to see what you like and then spend time either looking at books or searching the internet for artists that you like, you know, you just putting names in and seeing what's available on the market, and hopefully, you know, you'll find something that you like, an area, a style, a nationality, a period that appeals to you and that you can afford. And I always put in a pitch for the 19th century, because 19th century European paintings relative to American 19th century paintings are more affordable, and there's a big range in terms of what, you know, what you have to pay for a painting, where it could, you know, go from a few $1,000s up to millions of dollars. But there's a whole lot of variety in each tier of the market, and relative to American paintings, where there are many fewer artists, they're not as well trained, and there are many more people who want to buy them, and so therefore they're more expensive. So in terms of quality and value, 19th century European paintings are a better buy from my point of view.